The war between humans and the Valori had lasted for 30 years. Both sides had lost many ships and many lives. The fighting had become so terrible that neither species could remember why it had started in the first place. They only knew that they were tired. They wanted peace. The leaders of both species met on a neutral space station to sign a treaty. The humans sent their best diplomats. The Valori sent their high council. For 3 weeks, they talked and argued and finally agreed on terms that would end the bloodshed. But the Valori had one more demand. They said that peace on paper was not enough. They wanted peace in the heart. Among their people, the strongest bonds were formed through partnership. They proposed an exchange program where humans and Valori would be paired together as mates. This would tie the two species together in a way that could not be broken by politics. The human leaders were surprised by this request. They did not understand the Valori custom of arranged partnerships, but they wanted peace badly enough to agree. They asked for volunteers from their military officers, promising that those who participated would receive honors and promotions. Commander Daniel Hayes was one of those who stepped forward. Daniel was 42 years old. He had spent most of his adult life fighting the Valori. He had seen his friends die in battles that seemed to have no end. When he heard about the partnership program, he did not hesitate. He believed that if there was any chance to create real peace, he should take it. His crew on the starship Endurance thought he was crazy. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Sandra Cole, tried to talk him out of it. She said that no one knew what the Valori really wanted. She said that the program could be a trap. Daniel listened to her concerns. He respected Sandra because she always spoke honestly. But he told her that trust had to start somewhere. If humans only waited for the Valori to prove themselves first, they would wait forever. Someone had to be brave enough to go first. He submitted his name to the program and waited for his assignment. 3 months later, Daniel received a message from the Human Alliance Command. He had been matched with a Valori female named Cathara. The message included her basic information, her age, her rank in Valori society, and her assigned role in the partnership. There was no image attached. Daniel did not think much of this. He had learned that the Valori placed less importance on physical appearance than humans did. What mattered to them was the bond itself, the connection that would form between partners over time. What Daniel did not know was that the Valori Council had chosen Cathara for a specific reason. They did not want the partnership program to succeed. They had agreed to it only because they needed time to rebuild their fleet. Once they were strong again, they planned to break the treaty and resume the war. To ensure the program would fail, they selected their worst candidates for the human matches. They wanted the humans to reject these partners, to insult the Valori people, and to give them an excuse to end the treaty. Cathara was their perfect weapon. Among the Valori, beauty was measured by symmetry and color. The most desirable Valori had perfectly balanced features and skin that shimmered like polished silver. Cathara had neither of these things. Her face was uneven, with one eye slightly higher than the other. Her skin was patched with dull gray spots that never reflected light. By Valori standards, she was ugly, but her appearance was not her only flaw. Cathara was known throughout her world for her intense jealousy. She could not stand to see her previous suitors speak with other females. She accused them of betrayal over the smallest things. One by one, every male who had shown interest in her had walked away. Her own family had given up on her. They considered her a burden, someone who would never find a partner and would bring shame to their name. When the council selected her for the human program, they were glad to be rid of her. Cathara knew all of this. She knew that she was being sent away because no one wanted her. She knew that the human male who received her would probably refuse her the moment he saw her face. She had accepted this as her fate. The day of the exchange ceremony arrived. The Endurance docked at the neutral station where both species had gathered. Daniel put on his formal uniform and walked to the receiving hall with his crew behind him. The hall was large and filled with delegates from both sides. Humans in dark blue uniforms stood on one side. Valori in flowing robes of silver and gold stood on the other. In the center of the room, a raised platform served as the meeting point. Daniel watched as other partnerships were announced. He saw human officers step forward to meet their Valori partners. Some of the Valori were stunningly beautiful, with glowing silver skin and graceful movements. He noticed that the Valori council members seemed to be watching the reactions carefully, as if they were waiting for something to go wrong. Finally, his name was called. Daniel walked to the platform and stood in the center. He faced the Valori side of the hall and waited. The crowd parted, and Kithara stepped forward. She walked slowly, her head bowed low. She had 4 arms, like all Valori, and she kept them wrapped tightly around herself as if she was trying to disappear. Her robes were plain gray, not the bright colors worn by the other Valori females. With each step, she seemed to shrink smaller. Daniel heard whispers from the Valori side. He saw smirks on the faces of the council members. He understood immediately what was happening. They had given him someone they considered worthless. They expected him to react with disgust. He did not. Daniel walked down from the platform and crossed the floor toward Kithara. The whispers grew louder. The council members leaned forward in anticipation. Kithara stopped walking. She could not bring herself to look up. She waited for the rejection she knew was coming. The harsh words, the turn back, the laughter. Instead, she heard footsteps approaching. Then she heard a voice speaking her language. Though the accent was strange, Daniel had spent weeks learning the traditional Valori words of acceptance. He spoke them now, slowly and carefully, making sure each word was correct. He said that he was honored to stand before her. He said that he accepted the bond between them with an open heart. He said that from this day forward, they would face all challenges together. Kithara finally looked up. Her amber eyes were wide with shock. No one had ever spoken those words to her before. Daniel smiled at her. It was not a polite smile or a formal smile. It was genuine. He offered his hand, palm up, in the human gesture of friendship. For a long moment, Kithara did not move. She did not know what to do. Her whole life, she had been taught that she was worth nothing. She had been told that no one would ever want her. And yet here was this strange human, standing before her without disgust in his eyes, offering his hand as if she deserved it. Slowly, carefully, she extended one of her 4 hands and placed it in his. The hall fell silent. Daniel closed his fingers gently around hers. He turned to face the crowd, still holding her hand, and spoke in a loud, clear voice. He said that he was Commander Daniel Hayes of the starship Endurance. He said that Kithara was now his partner, and that anyone who disrespected her would answer to him. The Valori council members exchanged confused looks. This was not what they had expected. The human was supposed to reject her. He was supposed to demand a different partner. He was supposed to give them their excuse. Instead, he stood there holding her hand as if she was the most valuable being in the room. Kithara felt something strange growing in her chest. It was a feeling she did not recognize at first. It took her several moments to understand what it was. It was hope. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her. Not because they had to. Not because there was no other option, but because they wanted to. She did not know if this human could be trusted. She did not know what their future would hold. She did not know if she could be the partner he deserved. But in that moment, standing in the center of that great hall with her hand in his, she decided that she would try. Whatever came next, she would face it with him, because he had not looked away. 6 months had passed since Kithara came aboard the Endurance. Things had changed in ways she never expected. The crew no longer fell silent when she entered a room. Pete Lorenzo had started eating lunch with her in the engineering bay. Rachel Morgan asked her questions about Valori culture. Even Sandra Cole, who had been the most suspicious of all, had begun to treat her with genuine warmth. Kithra's jealousy had not disappeared. It probably never would. But she had learned to recognize it for what it was. When the dark feelings rose inside her, she would take a breath and remind herself of Daniel's words. Trust was a plant. It needed time to grow, and it was growing. She felt it in the way Daniel looked at her when he came home from a long shift. She felt it in the small gifts he brought her. Strange human candies and books about Earth. She felt it in the way he held her hand during quiet evenings, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. For the first time in her life, Kithara began to believe that she might actually be happy. Then the distress call came. It was early morning by the ship's clock. Daniel was on the bridge, reviewing reports, when the communication officer picked up the signal. It was coming from a Valori colony on the edge of the territory, a small world called HFY Prime. The message was broken and full of static, but the meaning was clear. The colony was under attack. Raiders had appeared from nowhere and were destroying everything. They needed help. Daniel did not hesitate. The Endurance was the closest ship capable of responding. He ordered full speed to HFY Prime. The journey took 4 hours. During that time, Daniel called his senior officers to the briefing room. He explained the situation. The raiders were a group called the Iron Fang, a collection of criminals and mercenaries who had grown powerful during the Long War. They attacked ships and colonies for money and supplies. They had no loyalty to any government. Sandra Cole brought up another concern. She said that the Iron Fang had connections to certain members of the Valori Council, the same ones who had tried to sabotage the peace treaty. She suspected that this attack was not random. Someone had told the raiders that a human ship with a human Valori bonded pair would respond. Daniel understood what she was saying. This was a trap. The raiders wanted to kill him and Kithara, to prove that humans and Valori could never truly be partners. He asked his officers if they wanted to turn back. No. One said yes. Sandra said that running away would only prove the enemy right. Pete said that the people on HFY Prime needed help, and the Endurance was the only one who could give it. Rachel said that she did not join the fleet to be a coward. Daniel smiled. He said that he was proud to serve with them. When the Endurance arrived at HFY Prime, the situation was worse than expected. The colony was burning. 3 Iron Fang warships circled the planet like vultures. On the surface, raiders were going from building to building, taking everything of value and killing anyone who resisted. Daniel ordered the attack. The Endurance was a good ship with a good crew, but it was only 1 vessel against 3. The battle was brutal from the start. The Iron Fang ships were fast and well armed. They hit the Endurance with everything they had. Kithara was in the engineering bay with Pete, working to keep the shields up. Every time the ship shook from an impact, she had to grab something to stay on her feet. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered. The air grew hot from overworked systems. Pete shouted orders to his team. They ran from station to station, patching holes and rerouting power. Kithara worked beside them, using her knowledge of Valori technology to push the shields beyond their normal limits. On the bridge, Daniel commanded the battle with calm focus. He had been in many fights during the war. He knew how to read the flow of combat, how to find the weak points in the enemy formation. One by one, he directed his weapons to pick apart the raider ships. The first Iron Fang vessel exploded in a ball of fire. The crew cheered, but there was no time to celebrate. The remaining 2 ships pressed their attack harder. Then something unexpected happened. One of the raider ships broke away from the battle and headed toward the planet's surface. Daniel realized what they were doing. They were going to destroy the colony completely, killing all the Valori civilians before the Endurance could stop them. He had to make a choice. Chase the ship heading for the planet, or stay and fight the one that was still attacking. He chose to split his forces. He sent a shuttle with Marines to intercept the ship going to the surface, while the Endurance continued fighting the remaining warship. It was a risky move. The warship saw that the Endurance was now alone and pressed its advantage. It concentrated all its fire on the bridge. The first hit knocked Daniel off his feet. The second killed 3 of his crew. The third tore a hole in the wall and sent debris flying everywhere. Daniel was hit by a piece of metal. It cut deep into his side, and blood began to pool on the floor. In the engineering bay, Kithara felt something strange. It was like a sudden pain in her chest, but it was not her pain. It was his. She had heard stories of this. Among the Valori, when partners were truly bonded, they could feel each other's suffering across any distance. It was supposed to be a sacred connection, something that only happened between perfectly matched souls. No one had ever expected it to happen to her, but it was happening now. Kithara dropped her tools and ran. She did not think about what she was doing. She did not consider the danger. She only knew that Daniel was hurt, and she had to reach him. The corridors were filled with smoke and chaos. Crew members ran past her, some heading to fight fires, others carrying wounded to the medical bay. Kithara pushed through all of them, her forearms shoving obstacles out of her way. She reached the bridge, just as a boarding party of Iron Fang raiders cut through the door. There were 6 of them, armed with heavy weapons and wearing thick armor. They had come to finish the job. They had come to kill the commander and his alien partner. Kithara saw Daniel on the floor, bleeding and barely conscious. Sandra Cole was standing over him with a pistol, but she was outnumbered. The raiders were already raising their weapons. Something snapped inside Kithara. The jealousy that had tormented her for so long, the fierce possessiveness that had driven everyone away, suddenly found a target that deserved it. These raiders wanted to take Daniel from her. They wanted to destroy the first good thing she had ever had. She would not allow it. Kithara grabbed a metal bar from the debris and charged. The raiders were surprised. They had expected a frightened alien female, not a warrior with 4 arms and fire in her eyes. Kithara swung the bar with all her strength and caught the first raider across the helmet. He went down hard. The second raider turned his weapon toward her, but she was faster. She ducked under his aim and slammed into him, using 2 arms to grapple while the other 2 struck. He fell. Sandra recovered from her shock and started shooting. Together, she and Kithara fought the remaining raiders. It was messy and desperate, but they did not stop. They could not stop. Reinforcements arrived just as the last raider fell. Marines flooded onto the bridge and secured the area. Medics rushed to Daniel and began treating his wound. Kithara collapsed beside him. Her hands were bloody, and her body was shaking from the adrenaline. But she did not care about any of that. She only cared that he was still alive. Daniel opened his eyes. He looked up at her face, streaked with smoke and tears, and he smiled. He said that he had felt her coming. He said that he had known she would not let him die. Kithara took his hand and held it tight. She said that she would never let anyone take him from her. She said that he was hers, and she would fight the entire galaxy to keep him. Daniel laughed, even though it hurt his wound. He said that he believed her. The battle ended soon after. The Marines intercepted the ship heading for the colony and forced it to retreat. The last Raider warship was destroyed. Setheri Prime was saved. When the reports reached the Valori Council, they heard something unexpected. They heard about a human commander who had risked everything to save Valori lives. They heard about a Valori female who had fought like a demon to protect her human partner. For the first time, Kithara's name was spoken not with pity or scorn, but with respect. She had found her place at last. Life aboard the Endurance was strange for Kithara. Everything was different from what she knew. The ship was built for humans, so the doors were too narrow for her wide shoulders. The chairs did not fit her body. The food was bland and colorless compared to what she had eaten on her homeworld. But the hardest thing was the people. The crew of the Endurance did not know what to make of her. For 30 years, they'd fought against the Valori. They had lost friends and family to Valori weapons. Now they were expected to accept a Valori female living among them, eating in their mess hall, walking through their corridors. Some of them tried to be polite. They nodded at her when she passed. They made room for her at the tables. But Kithara could see the tension in their shoulders. She could hear the silence that fell whenever she entered a room. Others were not polite at all. They whispered insults when they thought she could not hear. They called her names in their human language, words she did not understand but knew were cruel by the tone. A few times, someone bumped into her in the corridor and did not apologize. Kithara said nothing about any of this to Daniel. She did not want to cause trouble. She did not want him to regret choosing her. Daniel noticed anyway. He was a good commander. He paid attention to his crew. He saw the way some of them looked at Kithara. He heard the whispers that stopped when he walked by. He knew that changing 30 years of hatred would take time, but he also knew that hate grew when it was ignored. So he called a meeting of his senior officers. He told them that Kithara was his partner and a guest on his ship. He said that he expected her to be treated with respect. He said that anyone who could not follow this order should request a transfer immediately. Lieutenant Sandra Cole spoke up. She said that she understood the order, but she also understood the crew. They were scared. They did not know if Kithara could be trusted. They needed time. Daniel agreed that time was needed. But he said that time was not an excuse for cruelty. He said that the crew could keep their feelings private, but their actions had to be respectful. The meeting ended. The whispers became quieter after that, but they did not disappear completely. Kithara tried to make herself useful. She knew a lot about Valori technology, and the Endurance had captured several Valori devices during the war. She offered to help the engineering team understand how they worked. The chief engineer was a man named Pete Lorenzo. He was an older man with gray hair and a tired face. He had lost his brother in a Valori attack many years ago. When Kithara first came to his engineering bay, he did not welcome her, but Pete was also practical. He knew that understanding Valori technology could save lives. So he let Kithara stay. Over the following weeks, Kithara showed the engineering team how to improve the ship's shields. She explained the weaknesses in Valori weapons. She taught them how to detect Valori ships from farther away. Slowly, Pete's attitude began to change. He still did not like Kithara, but he respected her knowledge. He started asking her questions. He started listening to her answers. One day, he even said thank you. It was a small thing, but it meant everything to Kithara. For the first time, someone on this ship other than Daniel had treated her like she mattered. But even as things improved with the crew, Kithara faced a bigger challenge. It was the thing that had ruined every relationship she had ever tried to have. Her jealousy. Daniel spent a lot of time with his crew. He ate meals with them. He played cards with them in the recreation room. He laughed at their jokes and listened to their problems. This was normal for a human commander. It was how he built trust and loyalty. But to Kithara, it looked like something else. Among the Valori, partnered males did not spend time alone with other females. It was considered disrespectful to the bond. Casual touching, like a hand on the shoulder or a friendly hug, was forbidden. Laughter between a male and a female who were not partners was seen as a sign of attraction. Kithara watched Daniel with the women on his crew. She saw him pat Sandra Cole on the back after a successful mission. She saw him share a meal with a young female pilot named Rachel Morgan. She saw him laugh with the medical officer, a woman named Linda Park. Each time, she felt something dark growing inside her. It twisted in her stomach like a living thing. It whispered to her that Daniel did not really care about her. It told her that he preferred these human females. It said that she was foolish to believe he had truly chosen her. Kithara tried to control these feelings. She knew they were not fair. She knew that Daniel had done nothing wrong. But the jealousy was too strong. It had been part of her for too long. One evening, she could not hold it in anymore. Daniel came to their shared quarters after a long day. He was tired but happy. The ship had completed a successful patrol, and the crew was in good spirits. Kithara was waiting for him. She stood in the center of the room with her 4 arms crossed. Her amber eyes were burning. Daniel stopped in the doorway. He knew that look. He had seen it growing over the past few weeks, but he had hoped it would fade on its own. It had not. Kithara spoke first. Her voice was shaking. She asked him why he had been laughing with Sandra in the mess hall. She asked him why he let Rachel sit so close to him. She asked him if he wished he had been paired with a human female instead. Daniel listened without interrupting. He let her say everything she needed to say. When she finished, she was breathing hard, and her hands were trembling. He walked to her slowly. He did not raise his voice. He did not look angry or offended. He said that he understood. Kithara blinked. She had expected him to yell at her. She had expected him to tell her she was being stupid. That was what every Valori male had done before. Daniel sat down on the edge of the bed. He patted the space beside him and invited her to sit. She did, though she kept her distance. Daniel explained human friendship. He said that among his people, men and women could be close friends without any romantic feelings. He said that Sandra was like a sister to him. They had served together for 15 years. He trusted her with his life, but he had never wanted her as a partner. He said that Rachel was just a young pilot who reminded him of his niece, back on Earth. He said that Linda was the doctor who had saved his life twice, and he owed her his respect. He said that none of these women were a threat to their bond. He said that he had chosen Kithara, and he did not break his promises. Kithara listened. She wanted to believe him, but the dark voice inside her still whispered doubts. Daniel seemed to understand this. He said that he would not ask her to stop feeling jealous. He knew that feelings could not be controlled so easily, but he asked her to trust him until she could see the truth for herself. He said that trust was like a plant. It needed time to grow. He said that he would water it every day with his actions. He said that eventually she would see that he was telling the truth. Kithara was quiet for a long time. Then she asked him something that she had been afraid to ask. She asked why he had accepted her in the first place. She said that she knew she was not beautiful. She said that she knew her jealousy was a flaw. She asked what he had seen in her that no one else had seen. Daniel turned to face her fully. He looked into her amber eyes and spoke from his heart. He said that beauty faded with time, but character did not. He said that he had seen the fear in her eyes at the ceremony, and he had seen the courage it took for her to walk forward anyway. He said that anyone who could face rejection again and again and still keep walking was not weak. They were strong. He said that her jealousy was not a flaw. It was a sign that she cared deeply. The problem was not that she felt these things. The problem was that no one had ever shown her that she did not need to feel afraid. He said that he wanted to be that person. He said that he wanted to show her that she was worth loving, that she deserved loyalty, and that she did not have to fight to keep what was already hers. Kithara felt something break inside her. It was a wall she had built around her heart, brick by brick, every time someone had walked away from her. She had thought that wall was protecting her. Now she realized it was only keeping her trapped. For the first time in her life, she let herself cry. Daniel did not look away. He simply reached out and took her hand, just as he had done at the ceremony. He held it gently and waited for her tears to stop. When they finally did, Cathara looked at him with new eyes. She did not know if she could change. She did not know if her jealousy would ever go away. But she knew one thing for certain. She wanted to try. For him. For herself. For the bond they were building together. 10 years had passed since the ceremony where Daniel first took Kithara's hand. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Human Alliance and the Valori Confederacy were no longer enemies. They were partners, allies, and in many ways, family. Trade routes connected their worlds. Scientists from both species worked together on projects that neither could have accomplished alone. Children on both sides grew up, learning about each other's cultures without fear or hatred. The partnership program had grown far beyond its original purpose. What had started as a political tool had become something beautiful. Thousands of humans and Valori had formed bonds. And from those bonds had come understanding, cooperation, and peace. But no partnership was more famous than Daniel and Cathara's. Their story was taught in schools on both human and Valori worlds. It was a story about trust, about courage, and about seeing value where others saw nothing. Young people who felt rejected or unwanted learned about Kithara and found hope. Officers who struggled with difficult assignments learned about Daniel and found inspiration. Daniel had risen to the rank of admiral. He commanded an entire fleet now, not just a single ship. His hair had turned gray at the edges, and new lines had appeared on his face. But his eyes were still kind, and his handshake was still firm. Cathara had become the first Valori to hold an official position in the human fleet. She was the chief liaison officer, responsible for managing cooperation between human and Valori crews. She traveled between ships, solving problems and building bridges that would have been impossible before. Her appearance had not changed. Her skin was still patched with gray. Her features were still uneven. By Valori standards, she was still not beautiful, but the Valori had begun to question their standards. The younger generation looked at Kithara and saw something their parents had missed. They saw someone who had been rejected by everyone and had still found a way to matter. They saw someone whose loyalty was fierce and whose love was true. They began to wonder if the old definitions of beauty had been wrong all along. Some Valori started to see her gray patches not as flaws, but as marks of character. Some started to value loyalty and courage above symmetry and color. The change was slow, but it was real. Kithara's jealousy had never fully disappeared. It was still part of her, and probably always would be. But it had transformed over the years. What had once been a destructive force had become something else entirely. She was protective of what she loved, fiercely and completely. She guarded her bond with Daniel like a treasure. She watched over the officers under her command with the same intensity. When someone tried to hurt one of her people, they quickly learned that they had made a terrible mistake. The Valori had a word for this quality. They called it Karathi, which meant the fire that protects. It was considered one of the greatest virtues a warrior could have. Cathara had it in abundance. On the 10th anniversary of their partnership, Daniel arranged a surprise. He requested leave from his duties and took Kithara to a small planet at the edge of human space. It was a quiet world with blue grass and golden skies, a place where they could be alone. They had a small house there, one that Daniel had been building in secret for the past year. It was simple, with just enough rooms for two. The doors were wide enough for Kithara's shoulders. The chairs were designed to fit her body. Every detail had been planned with her in mind. Kithara stood in the doorway and looked at what he had made for her. She did not speak for a long time. Daniel stood beside her, suddenly nervous. He said that he wanted a place where they could rest when they got tired. He said that they had spent 10 years serving others, and he thought they deserved somewhere that was just for them. Kithara turned to him. Her amber eyes were shining. She said that no one had ever built anything for her before. She said that for most of her life, people had only wanted to tear her down. The idea that someone would spend time and effort creating something to make her comfortable was still difficult for her to understand. Daniel took her hand. He said that she should get used to it. He said that he planned to spend the rest of his life finding ways to make her happy. They walked into the house together. That night, they sat on the porch and watched the twin moons rise over the blue hills. The air was warm, and the sounds of strange birds filled the evening. Cathara leaned against Daniel's shoulder, her forearms wrapped around him in the way that had become so natural over the years. She asked him a question that she had asked before. Long ago, on a night when she was still learning to trust him, she asked if he had ever regretted his choice. Daniel smiled. He said that he had answered this question many times, but he was happy to answer it again. He said that trust was not about knowing the future. It was not about certainty or proof. Trust was about choosing to believe in something before you had any reason to believe. He said that when he had first seen her at the ceremony, he had not known that she would save his life. He had not known that she would become a hero. He had not known that their partnership would help change the galaxy. He had only known that she deserved a chance. He had only known that he was willing to give her everything that had happened since then. Every victory, every joy, every moment of peace had come from that single choice. He said that he would make the same choice 1,000 times without hesitation. Cathara was silent for a moment. Then she said something that she had never said before. She said thank you, not just for the house or for the anniversary, not just for standing by her through the hard times. She thanked him for seeing her when no one else would look. She thanked him for trusting her when she did not even trust herself. She said that he had given her something she had never had before. He had given her a future worth living. Daniel held her closer. He did not need to say anything. They had been together long enough that words were not always necessary. Above them, the stars spread out in a pattern that stretched to infinity. Somewhere out there, ships were flying, carrying humans and Valori who were working together, living together, building a future that neither species could have imagined alone. And at the center of it all was a simple truth. Sometimes the most valuable things in the universe were the ones that others threw away. Sometimes the greatest heroes were the ones that no one believed in. Sometimes the strongest bonds were formed not between perfect partners, but between broken ones who chose to heal together. Daniel and Cathara had proven this truth. They had built something beautiful from pieces that others had rejected. They had shown two civilizations that trust, given freely and nurtured carefully, could change everything. Their story was not over. They still had many years ahead of them, many challenges to face, many moments to share. But whatever came next, they would face it together, because that was what trust meant. It meant never facing the darkness alone. Cathara closed her eyes and listened to Daniel's heartbeat. She felt the warmth of his body beside her. She breathed in the scent of the blue grass and the evening air. For the first time in her life, she did not feel like the ugliest or the most unwanted. She felt chosen. She felt loved. She felt home. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. The news of Sethri Prime spread quickly through both civilizations. Humans heard about the brave crew that had risked their lives to save an alien colony. Valori heard about the strange partnership that had held strong under fire. Most importantly, the Valori Council heard about Cathara. For years, they had considered her worthless. They had used her as a tool to sabotage the peace treaty. They had expected her to fail and to drag the human commander down with her. Instead, she had become a hero. The council was worried. Their plan had not only failed, but it had made the partnership program look stronger than ever. Other humans in Valori were now asking to join. The treaty that they had hoped to break was becoming unbreakable. They decided to send an ambassador to investigate. Her name was Sareth. She was one of the highest-ranking members of the council, a female known for her intelligence and her cruelty. She had been one of the voices that had chosen Kithara for the program. She had laughed when the selection was made, calling it a gift that would keep giving. Now she needed to see for herself what had gone wrong. Sareth arrived on the Endurance 1 month after the battle. Her shuttle docked smoothly, and she stepped onto the ship with 3 attendants behind her. She wore robes of pure silver that sparkled under the lights. Her skin glowed with the perfect color that Valori prized so highly. She was everything that Kithara was not. Daniel met her at the airlock with full formal honors. He had been warned about Sareth's reputation, but he showed no fear. He greeted her with a bow and welcomed her aboard his ship. Sareth studied him with cold eyes. She saw a human male of average height, with a healing scar on his side from the battle. He did not look like a hero. He looked ordinary. She asked to see Kithara. Daniel led her through the ship. As they walked, Sareth noticed something strange. The human crew members did not look at Kithara with hatred or disgust. Some of them nodded at her as she passed. Others smiled. One young pilot even waved. This was not what Sareth had expected. They arrived at the quarters that Daniel and Kithara shared. Kithara was waiting inside, standing straight with her 4 arms at her sides. She had dressed in simple robes, nothing fancy, but she no longer kept her head bowed. Sareth looked at her for a long moment. She remembered the frightened female who had walked into the ceremony hall all those months ago. That female was gone. In her place stood someone different, someone who met her eyes without flinching. Sareth dismissed her attendants. She wanted to speak with Daniel and Kithara alone. When the door closed, Sareth dropped her formal tone. She spoke bluntly. She said that she had come to understand what had happened. She said that the council had made a mistake, and she needed to know how big that mistake was. Daniel asked her to explain. Sareth sat down on one of the chairs. She crossed her arms and looked at both of them with something like frustration. She admitted the truth. She said that the partnership program had been designed to fail. She said that the council had never wanted peace with humans. They had agreed to the treaty only to buy time for rebuilding their fleet. The partnerships were meant to fall apart, giving the council an excuse to restart the war. She said that Kithara had been chosen, specifically because she was considered the worst possible partner. She was ugly by Valori standards. She was jealous and difficult. She had never succeeded in any relationship. The council had believed that no human would accept her, and if one did, the partnership would collapse quickly. Kithara listened to this without expression. She had suspected some of this already, but hearing it spoken aloud still hurt. It was a reminder of everything she had been told her whole life. Daniel's reaction was different. His face grew hard, and his hands tightened into fists. But he did not explode with anger. He controlled himself. He asked Sareth why she was telling them this now. Sareth leaned back in her chair. She said that she was telling them because the situation had changed. The council's plan had failed. The partnership had not collapsed. Instead, it had become a symbol. Other Valori were beginning to question the old ways. They were asking why someone like Kithara had been treated so poorly. They were asking if the council had been wrong about other things, too. She said that some members of the council now wanted to continue the treaty. They had seen the benefits of peace. They were tired of war. But other members still wanted to fight. The council was divided, and the future was uncertain. She said that she had come to the Endurance to see the truth for herself. She needed to know if this partnership was real or just an act. Daniel stood up. He walked to Kithara and took her hand. He faced Sareth with steady eyes. He said that when he first saw Kithara at the ceremony, he had known that something was wrong. He had seen the way the council members smiled. He had understood that they were trying to insult him. He had suspected that Kythera had been chosen as a punishment, not a gift, but he said that it had not mattered. He said that he had looked at Kythera and seen someone who was afraid but still brave enough to walk forward. He had seen someone who expected rejection but kept trying anyway. He had seen strength hiding beneath pain. He said that he had chosen to accept her, not despite what she was, but because of what she was. He said that anyone who could survive so much cruelty and still have hope was not worthless. They were precious. He said that his choice had been proven right 100 times since then. He said that Kythera had saved his life. She had improved his ship. She had become part of his crew. She was his partner in every way that mattered. He looked Sareth directly in the eyes. He said that if the Council wanted to restart the war, they would find that humans did not abandon their partners. He said that he would fight for Kythera and for the peace they had built together. Sareth was silent for a long time. Then she turned to Kythera. She asked if this human was telling the truth. She asked if the bond was real. Kythera spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet but firm. She said that for her entire life, she had been told that she was worthless. She had believed it because everyone around her believed it. She had expected Daniel to be like everyone else, but he was not. She said that Daniel had seen her at her worst. He had seen her jealousy and her fear. He had seen her cry and rage and doubt. And through all of it, he had never walked away. He had never made her feel small. He had helped her become someone she could be proud of. She said that the bond between them was more real than anything she had ever known. It was not perfect. They still had difficulties. She still struggled with her jealousy sometimes. But they faced those difficulties together, and that made all the difference. She looked at Sareth without fear. She said that she did not care what the Council decided. She said that she had found her place, and no one could take it from her. Sareth stood up. She adjusted her silver robes and walked toward the door. But before she left, she paused. She said that she had expected to find a failure. She said that she had expected to find proof that the Council was right about Kythera and about humans. Instead, she had found something else. She did not say what it was. She simply nodded once at both of them and left the room. 3 weeks later, the Valori Council announced a change in policy. The partnership program would continue, but the selection process would be reformed. Partners would no longer be chosen as punishments or jokes. They would be chosen with care and respect. The announcement did not mention Kythera by name, but everyone knew why the change had been made. Daniel celebrated by taking Kythera to the observation deck. They stood together and watched the stars, the same stars that had once seemed so cold and distant. Kythera asked him if he thought Sareth had truly changed her mind. Daniel said that he did not know. He said that people were complicated and change took time. But he said that it did not matter what Sareth or the Council thought. What mattered was what they had built together. Kythera leaned against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. Her forearms wrapped around his waist. For the first time in her life, she was not afraid of the future. She was ready for it.